Snatcher is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi cyberpunk action-adventure game. Konami calls it a visual novel. Why visual novel, you ask? Well, the game is heavily focused on a storytelling with some help of computer graphics, which was in its infancy at the time. Before I get into details, let's have a look at a bit of a history. Snatcher was released and re-released and re-released number of times. Each version differs from the previous one quite significantly, mainly because every time it was released it was for a different platform and in a different year. The first original version came out in 1988 and was made for the Japanese NEC PC-88 computers, and as such it's unfortunately only in Japanese. It never came out in English or was ever translated. I've played it anyway just for the review, even though my Japanese sucks. It wasn't exactly enjoyable. Imagine reading a book in a language you know every 10th word. It's not exactly entertaining, innit? Even though it was supposed to be a PC-88 exclusive, Konami wanted more money, so it was released for the MSX later the same year. The MSX version was sort of special. Apart from the game, the box also included a special cartridge with an additional sound hardware developed by Konami themselves, called SCC, which stands for Sound Chip Cartridge. Probably. The cartridge also came with an additional 64 KB of memory. The game was, again, released only in Japanese. However, there is an unofficial English patch, so anybody who can't speak or rather read Japanese can enjoy this version. Two years later, Konami released SD Snatcher, also for the MSX. SD meaning super deformed. The SD stuff is a Japanese, well, specialty. It looks terrible. I don't know why Japanese do this, I hate it. Anyway, the game was remade to be a classical Japanese RPG, but once again it was only in Japanese. There's also an unofficial English translation, and like the normal Snatcher for the MSX, even SD Snatcher came with an additional sound cartridge. In 1992, Konami released Snatcher Pilot Disc for the PC Engine, which you may know as TurboGrafx in the US, and it's basically a demo disc with some additional promo stuff. A trailer, some interviews, music player, and some info about the game in an interactive manner.
Nanda?
胃壁の粘膜下層から筋層に達する血層が見られます。
ギブスンは胃潰瘍だ。
はい、さらに胃袋内に残存物があります。残存物はタンパク質、該当肉は原肉です。
原肉？
クジラの肉です。相対反応あり。
スナッチャーか。外へ出るぞ。
腰が抜けました。
走れ、爆発するぞ。俺はギリアンシード、バイオロイドを狩るジャンカーだ。中でも最も危険を買うランナー。シティに潜む奴らの化けの皮を剥ぎ処理すること、それが俺の任務だ。やるかやられるか、そんな欺瞞と緊張の日々を生きている。
こ んにちは、コナミの綾坂です。今日は、コナミの技術研究所に来ています。そしてゲストにマイコンベーシックマガジンでおなじみの山下明さんをお迎えしてます。どうもこんにちは。
こんにちは。今日はなんかコナミさんからすごいニュースがあるということなんで、大阪の技術研究所まで訪問させていただいてるんですけど、楽しみにしてます。
The full version for the PC Engine was released about 2 months later. Surprisingly enough, both of these were only for the Japanese market and no English translation whatsoever.
これは軽い。
そうじゃろう。軍で使用しているレーガンとはわけが違う。スーパーエンプラと炭素繊維、さらにセラミックを使って作られている。
Another couple of years later, in 1994, a version for the Sega Mega CD in Europe or Sega CD in the US sprung out, but this time it was different. It was a version made specifically for the Western market, and it was in English. Moreover, it was fully dubbed in English. Funnily enough, there was no Japanese version for the Mega CD, for some reason.
This isn't enough to prove that our Freddie Nielsen is a snatcher.
True. Without more evidence, we cannot get a scanning warrant.
We'd like to take a look in your bathroom if you don't mind.
Oh, you need to use the bathroom?
No, we'd like to investigate your bathroom.
Really? Whatever. Please, go right ahead.
And another couple of years later, the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation versions got out, but once again only in Japanese. With huge changes to graphics and some changes to music, the story is basically the same as the one for the Mega CD and the PC Engine. So out of 7 different versions, only one was made for the Western market, and if it weren't for the unofficial translations, there wouldn't be the other 2 for the MSX. Let's get cracking then. I'm gonna review the game without any sort of spoilers, at least I'll try to, so you may enjoy the game if you wanna play or watch a playthrough. Instead of describing you the premise of the game, let's watch the English intro. It's gonna introduce the game better than I ever could.
June 6, 1996. A mysterious explosion destroys the Chernobyl research facility near Moscow. Lucifer Alpha, a powerful biological weapon under secret development there, is released into the atmosphere, creating a deadly biohazard. Carried by the trade winds, Lucifer Alpha spreads throughout Eastern Europe and Eurasia, destroying 80% of the populace. Half of the world's people die. The greatest biohazard in history later becomes known simply as the catastrophe. But at this time, who could have possibly imagined that the ultimate biohazard wouldn't occur for another half-century? 50 years later, mankind faces its greatest crisis, the appearance of a mysterious android life form. Its purpose and origin are unknown. Is it a new form of weapon? or perhaps an invasion from some other world. They appear during winter, killing humans and infiltrating society by taking the place of their victims. Employing an artificial skin, they can sweat and even bleed. Part organic, part machine, they're almost impossible to distinguish from those they kill. As they steal their victims' bodies in order to take their place, these mysterious invaders become known as Snatchers.
How was work? Everything okay?
Gillian, what is it? What's wrong?
Jamie, I've become a junker.
A junker? Gillian, but why?
Jamie, you know why. It's the only way we can regain our lost memories. Snatcher is the only word that keeps coming back every time we try to remember our pasts. I have to face them to find out why.
Yes, but I can sense that there is something terrible hidden in our past. And if we remember it, it will destroy us.
Jamie! I'm going now. Jamie!
What? I can't hear you!
Gillian Seed, estimated age 31. 3 years ago, he and his wife Jamie Seed are taken into protective custody in the Siberian Neutral Zone by the 17th Siberian Investigative Force. Both Gillian and Jamie suffer from severe amnesia, their memories of events prior to being picked up in Siberia lost in a mysterious mental fog. 2 years ago, after a vain attempt to rebuild their marriage, Jamie and Gillian separate. Following extensive special military training, Gillian is ordered to report to Neo-Kobe City as a junker, effective today.
The graphics differs from version to version quite a lot. They improved the graphics here and there every time they released a new version. You see, most of the story is set through dialogues, and the graphics helps quite a lot describing what's going on. This is the original version for the PC-88. The game is from 1988, it was restrained by the PC-88 hardware, so it looks a bit rough around the edges and also around the center, but it still managed to introduce beautifully hand-drawn art. Since Konami probably wanted to keep the same atmosphere and gameplay across the platforms, the style is practically the same in all the versions. What changed is resolution, colors, details, and they added some cutscenes here and there. The MSX version looks pretty much the same as the PC-88 version, but the main graphics window is a bit smaller, it's cut on the side. It's mainly because of hardware restrictions, the MSX has lower resolution. SD Snatcher is also for the MSX, but uses completely different style, and if they didn't make it SD, it would have been a much better game, at least in terms of graphics. SD style sucks. The PC Engine version was actually the first game ever Konami crammed into a CD. They were able to use better graphics and more cutscenes, but the basic style remained the same.
分かっておる。それでは君専用に開発したナビゲーターを呼んでみようか。おい、メタルギア。メタル、自己紹介しろ。
はい、ギリアン、はじめまして。
The Mega CD version looks very similar to the PC Engine version, but they've added a cutscene into the intro and censored a couple of scenes throughout the game for some reason. On every Japanese version, you can say this Snatcher went it up, the Mega CD has censored it. As well as this scene where there's naked Katrina in a shower, they partially covered her on the Mega CD.
Whoa!
You pervert!
Also, the underwear was removed from the floor.
I'll open the blinds by altering the electrical polarity. Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead.
Another censored scene is here where the dog's guts are still moving and twitching, but on the Mega CD they are not.
It's Alice!
The dog is dead. Body temperature suggests it was killed about 10 minutes ago. No doubt the work of Snatchers.
Scum! No reason to kill the poor animal.
Not sure why this scene was changed for the Mega CD, because every other platform reflects the original where there's nothing to be censored. Maybe they were just lazy and used the same picture for two separate scenes. And that's pretty much all I've noticed what's different on the Mega CD version. Speaking of censorship, the Saturn and PlayStation versions are a bit strange in this regard. They returned to the naked fun bags, the shower scene and the underwear, but there are no guts at all in the dog scene. They actually turned the dog around to avoid showing ripped stomach, and in this scene, they cut off the head. The next one is not exactly censorship, more like copyright infringement. In the PC-88 and the MSX versions, you can find lots of characters from various films, like the Alien, Cornelius from Planet of the Apes, etc. In the Mega CD version and on, they've changed all of them to characters from Konami games. Me personally, I'd call it just film references, but you know how it goes in the film industry. And then we've got this abomination of an intro cutscene, which is really nothing to write home about. The music was composed by Masahiko Ikariko, who was instructed by Kojima to create the music as cinematic as possible, which I reckon he did to a great success, even with all the restrictions of the old hardware. The music gets better with each release. They usually use this rearranged music to accommodate different sound system and better hardware. The PC-88 uses standard FM synthesis since there wasn't a better option at the time, but it still sounds very good even after so many years. The FM synth is quite limited in its capabilities though, and that's why Konami had included wavetable into the cartridge for the MSX version. It of course sounds a little bit better than the PC-88 version. Since the PC Engine version came out on a CD, it includes audio CD tracks. Some tunes use PC Engine's FM synth, and the same goes for the Mega CD as well, and to be honest, every single track is simply astonishing.
I'm very sorry about all of that. I'm Katrina Gibson, Sean's daughter.
I'm so sorry.
What's the matter, Mr. Steed?
I'm very sorry, Katrina. It's my fault your father's dead.
Gillian.
No, if I could have gotten there just a little sooner, your father might still be alive.
The PC Engine's cutscenes use audio CD tracks, and for obvious reasons, Saturn and PlayStation versions reused these audio CD tracks. For some reason, they haven't reused the FM tracks, but rather they are completely new tracks, which I don't fancy too much. My absolute favorite is Mega CD version. There's literally no tune I wouldn't like. Later Saturn on PlayStation releases used most of the tracks from the PC Engine or Mega CD, but some have been replaced and I don't fancy them at all. They seem out of place, they just don't fit.
I'm very sorry about all of that. I'm Katrina Gibson, Sean's daughter.
I'm so sorry.
What's the matter, Mr. Steed?
I'm very sorry, Katrina. It's my fault your father's dead.
Gillian.
No, if I could have gotten there just a little sooner.
失礼しました。私、ギブスンの娘のカトリーヌです。どうなさったの？ギリアンさん。
カトリーナ、すまない。君のお父さんを死なせたのは私の責任だ。
ギリアン。
Lots of soundtracks have been released, obviously. The most interesting of them all is probably this. It's called Snatcher, I reckon, and it's a radio drama made by Kojima and scored by Akira Yamaoka. It's a sort of prequel and the story is about Gibson. My Japanese sucks, so I have no idea what the story is about. Since the PC-88 and the MSX have too little memory, it was pretty much impossible to use voice acting at the time, even with the SSE cartridge. It forced Kojima to use lots of FM generated sounds, for instance this annoying sound that sort of mimics speech. On the PC-88 it can be turned off with the caps lock key. Unfortunately you have to endure that through the entire game on the MSX. I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. Fortunately it was eliminated when the PC Engine version introduced voice acting, which was of course in Japanese. The Japanese voice acting here is not bad really, I've heard better though. But what was bloody surprising was the voice acting for the Mega CD. I can only say it's simply excellent.
メタル、自己紹介しろ。
はい。ギリアン、はじめまして。あなたのサポートを務めます。 メタルギアマーク2です。よろしく。
メタルギアか。変な名前だな。
かわいいわ。
赤くなっとる。こいつのフォルムは20世紀末に全世界を恐怖の渦に巻き込んだあのメタルギアから取ってる。じゃがこいつはあれとは違って平和利用のために開発されたもんじゃ。
I know. All right, allow me to introduce the Navigator, which I designed especially for you. Hey, Metal Gear, get out here. Metal, introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Pleased to meet you, Gillian. I am Metal Gear Mach 2. I am programmed to be your personal assistant.
Metal Gear? That's a pretty weird name.
Oh, he's cute.
Thank you.
I think he's turning red. I took his basic design and his name from the Metal Gear menace of the late 20th century. But quite unlike that Metal Gear, this one was designed for peaceful purposes.
Gillian, Metal Gear, Mika, everybody did an excellent job. Well, except for this bloke.
All right, buddy, get up.
Hey, I only do liquid sky, dude. Just once in a while. I swear. I don't touch anything else. Don't hurt me, man. Come on. Call me an ambulance, will ya?
I'm no cop, I'm a junker. I couldn't care less if you're a buyer, a pusher, or what. What I want to know is if you're a snatcher or human.
Pretty much every time I play some Japanese game and it's possible to switch voices to English, I always play it in Japanese with subtitles, because English voice acting sucks every single time. Snatcher, if I had to choose, I'd play it in English for sure because the English voice acting is cracking. The PlayStation and Saturn versions, being for Japanese market, are of course in Japanese. And since Konami already had finished the Japanese version for the PC Engine, they reused the voices, naturally.
おい、起きろ。
俺は単なるバイヤーだ。リキッドスカイ以外手出しちゃいねえ。勘弁してくれ。早く救急車呼んでくれ。
俺はデカじゃない、ジャンカーだ。貴様がバイヤーだろうとなかろうと関係ない。要は貴様がスナッチャーか人間かってことだ。
You control Gillian in two ways, with an on-screen menus and shooting a gun. You can shoot a gun only at a specific locations and situations when an enemy appears. The Mega CD has an advantage here, because you can utilize a light gun during shooting sequences, otherwise you have to use a gamepad or a numeric keypad. Through menus you can look at things or people, investigate, talk to people, use stuff and move to different places. Looking at things, investigating, and generally any action doesn't usually disappear when you deplete all possible options, and it's usually not really clear when you've investigated everything or a character doesn't want to talk to you about something new, so you have to keep trying until the character starts repeating their lines or until something happens. Some options or dialogues appear after you performed certain action, so you have to go through all the options and try all of them a couple of times. You literally can't get stuck in this game, the gameplay is as linear as it gets. As the Snatcher being an RPG behaves completely differently. Fights differ a bit from standard Japanese RPGs like Final Fantasy or Breath of Fire. There are no random encounters, so if you want to evade fighting, you must evade enemies running about on the screen. Fighting takes place in the first person, you select who to fight with and where to shoot, you can also use items, well, standard RPG stuff. You can buy new more powerful weapons and ammo, and after every fight you receive some experience points which level up your character like in every other RPG. When you defeat an enemy they disappear, but they're back if you come back in a bit. The game is split into 3 acts. The PC-88 and the MSX versions were supposed to be a lot longer, but due to hardware limitations the game ended with Act 2 and was to continue in a sequel which never came out. Well, never came out for the PC-88 that is. With the PC Engine and the CD, Konami was able to cram in the Act 3. To me, the Act 3 seems a bit rushed and on a budget, but it concludes the game rather well, makes it much more interesting and overall much better. In 2021, a fan group called DeltaSoft custom-made Act 3 for the MSX, which was based on the Mega CD version. I haven't played the game, I watched a playthrough on YouTube and it really is based on the Mega CD version, except for the music, which is absolutely horrible. Act 1 is all about tracking a Snatcher who killed a fellow junker. In Act 2, Gillian learns who killed his fellow junker, what may be Snatcher's motives, and who may be behind the scenes. Act 3 concludes the game. You find out who's behind the Snatcher's menace and about Gillian's lost past, which is, of course, connected to Snatchers. Junkers are elite forces assigned to dispose of Snatchers, and as you may have noticed, the Junkers are quite similar to Blade Runners, the Snatchers to Replicants, and the entire premise of the game to Invasion of Body Snatchers. Some may even call it an imitation or rip-off. Just by looking at the main protagonist being somewhat a copy of Deckard, one of the Snatchers looking like Roy, or even the city in the intro credits, all of that is looking pretty familiar, innit? I'd call it an imitation in this regard. Also, Kojima could have named the game something else rather than Snatcher when it's influenced by a film with a similar name. Now, is the game actually a copy of those films? It may seem like it at first, but throughout the game you find out it's far cry from it. The story is set in Japan in a fictional artificial city island called Neo Kobe, which is not far from a real city called Kobe. The story kicks off with Gillian arriving to Neo Kobe to become a new member of the Junkers elite force, where he meets his new co-workers, including a robot called Metal Gear, which is gonna guide, help and entertain him through the entire game. Metal Gear is sort of a second main character. He always tags along with you wherever you go, have a conversation with you, reports what you find, answers your questions about a case, analyzes evidence you find along the way, allows you to save a progress in the game, allows you to make a video call, and can even use a torch in a couple of scenes. Right on the first day in your new job, you are sent to back up another junker, which is not exactly going well for the junker. It triggers the investigation obviously, and you start digging deeper and deeper into the Snatcher mystery. The investigation takes you to different parts of Neo Kobe, you meet lots of characters to talk to, and of course lots of Snatchers to kill. There are generally no major differences in the story between the platforms, except for maybe one. During the game in the PC-88 and the MSX versions, you find out somebody has eaten a whale meat, which is looked down upon in the game, and it makes sense, Japan is being scolded by the West for whaling a lot. In the Mega CD version it changed to buffalo meat for some reason, which doesn't make much sense in this setting. Moreover, because of that they had to replace lots of lines in the dialogue, and one joke for a useless line. As the Snatcher is an RPG, so it behaves a little bit differently than an adventure game. The problem with SD Snatcher is that its storytelling sucks. It's horribly simplified, it lacks the depth Snatcher's got. Well, it's got no depth for that matter. The game just tells you go here and there and do this and that, and if I haven't played the original, I wouldn't know what's going on. Apart from SD Snatcher, Snatcher is certainly one of the best games I've ever played. It sucks you in right from the start and won't let you go until you see the end credits. You can finish the game in about 7 hours if you already know what you have to do, but if it's your first time and you want to enjoy the story and the game, it's about 10 hours of gameplay. Konami changed a couple of things in the English version. Random was renamed to Random, Katrina is now 18 instead of 14, and Junker acronym changed from Judgment Uninfected Naked Kind and Execute Ranger to Japanese Undercover Neurokinetic Elimination Rangers. There may be even something else which I haven't noticed. Well, Snatcher is an outstanding game. It's got a cracking story somewhat influenced by Blade Runner and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, evolving into something completely different during the game. Something completely different with an unexpected twist at the end. It's got an excellent music even for the old PC-88 or the MSX, but my absolute personal favorite is the soundtrack for the Mega CD, where the music is simply perfect. The Japanese voice acting isn't very good, so the Mega CD takes the lead. The graphics are a bit simplistic because it's a bloody old game, but it's still absolutely beautiful. Even the oldest PC-88 version looks great. In terms of graphics, my favorite is probably the Saturn version. I recommend playing the game rather than watching a playthrough, but both are fine if you're sick of crappy films and games nowadays. And that about does it. Catch you later, cheerio.